Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Erik Voss, and is James Gunn establishing that Lex Luthor was the actual hero of the Superman Saga? How could we ever forgive Lex after what he did to Malik? With the upcoming sequel, Man of Tomorrow, confirmed to be a Superman plus Lex Luthor team-up story against a bigger threat, and Gunn confirming that he just completed his revised draft of the script, the director is now inviting us to re-examine the Superman film after several interviews to try to repaint Lex Luthor as a somewhat more sympathetic figure, less of the villain and more of just an egomaniacal, humanistic op, I suppose, to the extraterrestrial metahuman who, in the past 3 years of the DCU timeline, captivated this world and disrupted the status quo. Yeah, that's all he was. Also a murderer and someone who did a lot of horrible things. But in this video, I am going to take James Gunn up on his invitation and re-examine Lex Luthor in the 2025 Superman film, and perhaps further appearances he could be making in other DCU titles, to explain why Lex Luthor was ultimately, in some ways, right? Really, I'm just gonna discuss how bad things could have to get in the DCU for Superman to work alongside someone who so cold-bloodedly killed our favorite falafel vendor. And an announcement: New Rockstars is launching a spin-off horror channel called The Witching Hour. Starting October 1st, watch Jessica Clemons, Gina Ippolito, and me in weekly video essays with hot takes of what scares us the most about our favorite horror films. Subscribe to that channel and watch the trailer, where I made the mistake of telling our editors to include a clip of me saying "Hail Satan" without realizing a lot of the audience who would be watching this trailer probably did not see Longlegs or get that reference. But you know, that kind of devilish humor is what you can expect from the unhinged flavor of me on that other channel, so if you're into that, subscribe. And if you're not, still subscribe. Speaking of psychos who dance with the devil, let's talk about Lex Luthor in Superman. Played by Nicholas Hoult with a tantrumy anger and an effete pomposity, the Lex Luthor of this movie is a tech billionaire who has devised what he feels is the perfect combination of tactics to destroy Superman. One, a clone created from Superman's DNA called Ultraman, who can match Superman in brute strength. Two, a carefully researched list of attack moves that Lex could use to puppet Ultraman, like a series of video game button mashing. Three, a social media mob of anti-Superman hate, most of which composed by monkey bots that particularly get under Superman's skin. Four, an effective media blitz aimed at Superman's unilateral intervention in a controversial political conflict between Barrick and Jarhanpur. Five, Lex on the side driving up that conflict so that Superman would be forced to intervene. Six, an even more effective media blitz coming from the translation of the message from Superman's parents, framing the vague statement in the language of Sa Unkrypton into an accusation of Superman creating a secret harem. And seven, somehow getting his hands on the one known weakness of Superman's strength, kryptonite. All in all, it's a pretty good plan. And when it comes to motive, the research of Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen from the Daily Planet, gathered from Eve Teskmacher's selfies, indicates that Lex's goal is something rather mustache-twirly: a deal with Baravian leadership to cede half of the land of Jarhanpur so that Lex could create a new country that he calls Luthoria and crown himself king of a technologically advanced utopia.
But in the background of the shots are maps, contracts, all kinds of documents chronicling Baravia's agreement to cede half of the country to Lex Luthor once the invasion is complete.
He wants to make himself king.
King?
King's cultish acolytes believe he's going to create a technologically advanced utopia.
Utopia?
There's a profit factor as well. I mean, the petroleum deposits alone are worth multiples of his investment.
But what's interesting, though, is that Lex himself never brings up Luthoria in the film. When it comes time for him to monologue to Superman about why he does what he does, he brings up a much more personal motive.
You're driven by envy, Luthor. You couldn't be more obvious.
No shit. I'm not dim. I'm aware envy consumes my every waking moment. I know when they mention Galileo or Einstein or one of these other twits in the same breath as me, I feel a tide of vomit burn the back of my throat. But at least Galileo did something. He wasn't some dopey Venusian catapulted onto this planet just to have the world fawn over him, because his strength illuminates how weak we all really are. So my envy is a calling. It is the sole hope for humanity, because it is what has driven me to annihilating you. What a...
In truth, it was both envy and the promise of whatever Luthoria would be that motivated Lex together. Envy is what fired the furnace within him, and these maps of Luthoria were really like one of the blue sky practical dreams of what Lex imagined his future could look like without Superman. Now, the recent episode of Peacemaker, episode 6, spoiler warning if you haven't seen that episode or if you really care about this episode confirmed that Lex Luthor was in Belle Reve prison with some unsavory things to say about the people in the cell next to him that might include Killer Croc and someone else that we're still trying to figure out, probably not Dr. Phosphorus. But then Lex made a deal with Rick Flag Sr. to give Argus a scanner to find Peacemaker's QUC portal that looks like his assistant Cindy Saperson will recover from their floating command center in next week's episode 7, in exchange for Lex being transferred to Van Kull Prison, a prison from the comics that's located in Metropolis. So now Lex is back in the Metropolis city limits, and I don't think that 265-year prison sentence is gonna stick. Now, James Gunn went on Howard Stern recently, and both of these men talked about understanding where Lex was coming from. And in this interview is when Gunn first confirmed that Man of Tomorrow would be a Lex Superman team up.
And it is a story about Lex Luthor and Superman having to work together to a certain degree against a much bigger threat. And it's more complicated than that. It's as much a Lex movie as it is a Superman movie. I relate to the character of Lex Luthor, sadly.
I do relate to Lex Luthor in the sense that I would be so jealous if there was in reality a Superman. He's God.
Yeah.
He can do whatever he wants.
That's the center of Lex for me. 3 years ago, before Superman came along, he was considered the greatest guy in the world, even with other metahumans and superheroes in the world. And then in one fell swoop, this guy comes in wearing a silly costume with dimples and a charming smile and a great chin, and he's forgotten.
You are so fucking right. Lex does represent all of us. Imagine some dickwad is getting everywhere. He's getting all the girls. He can fly. And I'd be like, why the fuck does he have that and I don't? I couldn't be happy for him.
I know I should have a physical every year, but every year I put it off. Finding a doctor that is in my network can be such a hassle. The amount of time I've spent on automated phone trees only to wind up talking to a human whose solution is to put me into another phone tree is enough to make me just say, I don't need to see a doctor that bad after all. But then I finally had something go wrong with my foot and I just could not ignore it and I had to see a doctor. I had to find another way. And what I found was ZocDoc, today's video sponsor. ZocDoc makes it easy to find the right doctor for you fast, so that you can stop putting it off and finally cross that appointment off your list. ZocDoc is a free website where you can search and compare high quality in-network doctors, choose the right one for your needs, and click to instantly book an appointment. From mental health to dentistry, eye care, skincare, and everything in between. And ZocDoc isn't just one type of doctor. They have more than 100,000 providers across nearly every specialty. It's the one-stop shop for all your healthcare needs. Plus, it's completely free. My favorite part is that you can see the doctor's actual appointment openings, choose a time that works for you, and click to instantly book a visit without having to get on the phone. My back hurt, I didn't know why, and I was able to find a physical therapist who helped me out instantly. Plus, ZocDoc helps you get appointments fast, typically within just 24 to 72 hours of booking, and you can even score same-day appointments. No need to call doctor's offices and wait on hold either. ZocDoc lets you do everything online. So stop putting off those doctor's appointments. Go to ZocDoc.com/newrockstars or click the link in the description to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. And then, in more recent days, James Gunn reiterated this defense of Lex Luthor to our friend Mallory Rubin at The Ringer.
What are you most interested in exploring on the Lex front in Man of Tomorrow? And in the future more broadly?
Yeah, I think I'm just more interested in getting into the heart of Lex and seeing how he fits into all of this. I think that getting to know Lex more as a human being, I think we saw, a lot about the evil part of Lex. It's hard. He's pretty evil. He's a pretty bad guy. But I think that I just want to get to know. I think he as a character is really interesting. I think that there's something, despite everything, that is incredibly heroic about Lex. Take aside like morality, which is hard to do. But here is this guy who's saying, you can hold up a building, you can shoot down, planes with your eyes. Fuck you. Yeah. I'm gonna kick your ass because I'm better than you.
Right.
And that is, you can't, I can't help but admire his tenacity and his sort of ego and his, his ambition is beyond compare.
Yeah. He puts in the work.
He's the underdog. At the end of the day,
Sure.
He's the underdog. I mean, yeah, sure, he's got a lot of corporate power and these other things that he can use to manipulate things, but he can't fly in outer space. He can't lift up a building. He can't punch something across the 3 states. He's a guy, and I love that.
So here you're seeing James Gunn making clear that Lex is still a very evil person, like murdering the sweet Malik in cold blood, physically abusing Eve Tesmacher, on top of all the other villainous things Lex does in the Superman film, like his dealings with Bravia, destroying Superman's reputation, unleashing a kaiju on a populated area, locking up various dissidents and ex-girlfriends in a pocket universe, and pushing his employees to open and widen a rift to destroy blocks of Metropolis and its suburbs, maybe even the whole world. There's not much we can do to really defend someone like this. He's a villain, and he's a pretty effective villain. But what James Gunn is doing in these interview clips is what any good writer has to do, especially when he's currently in the process of revising Man of Tomorrow into the shooting draft as the film goes in pre-production. He's getting into the headspace of his characters and even his villain. He's humanizing the villain's motives so that he can properly write the character as now a frenemy to Superman as they face a larger threat together. Now, we are speculating that that threat will be Brainiac based on the fact that Brainiac showed up in James Gunn's storyboard art for the first film before he decided to just make Lex the villain. Gunn did start to tap into this humanization with Lex's envy monologue. Envy, we know, is one of the 7 deadly sins, and we recognize it as an immoral reason to do anything, but we also recognize it as a very natural human feeling and something that we've all felt at some point. And when it comes to judging Lex's morality, let's be clear, we cannot simply extract intent from impact and ignore his objectively immoral actions. Murder, kidnapping, fraud, war crimes, assault, terrorism, the list goes on and on. Since he did all of those things and seems to feel no shame whatsoever for them, we really have to be careful to never suggest that Lex Luthor is the hero, or even, I would say, an anti-hero. Like, I think we've had enough troublesome takes in other fandoms, like Darth Vader's Empire would never tolerate the kind of sexual assault that we saw in Andor, despite the countless examples of mass genocide and torture and racism. And, oh yeah, that one time Anakin force choked his pregnant wife. I just don't want us to blur the lines and confuse the baddies for the good guys. But I think there's an opportunity here to develop a more comedic relationship like what we saw between Thor and Loki and the sequels after those characters were first introduced in the MCU. But I think what James Gunn is getting at is trying to give the character of Lex Luthor something reasonable to argue with Superman over as they begrudgingly join forces to face an even larger threat. Lex's envy comes from his humanism. He does not trust an extraterrestrial to be humanity's best hope, and he really is pissed off that the rest of humanity in under 3 years could so quickly put all of their hopes into something they know comes from another world. Now again, Lex is wrong in several ways to insist that humanity only rally behind their own homegrown native sons. In fact, I would argue that it's even more demonstrative of Superman's good nature that he so loves his adopted home and his adopted family and works so hard to embrace this strange culture that he wasn't born into with all of its trashy punk rock music. And if someone works so hard to serve us and to get us to love them and to try to help us and to protect us, Lex should be freaking grateful to have this kind of ally to humanity. As an American, he should be especially grateful that this alien landed in Kansas and was raised by farmers. But I do think what Lex does not trust are just 2 things. One, he does not trust the cosmos and the possible threats that could come from that darkness. Maybe Lex knows some horrible things are out there better than Superman knows. Or maybe Lex just read Robert Kirkman's Invincible comics and he knows of Viltrumite when he sees one. Also, 2, I don't think Lex trusts the rest of humanity that much either. If they could so quickly turn on a dime, and if they don't see what good things Lex has been trying to do for them. Which brings me back to Luthoria. Isn't it interesting that the Lex of this universe does not aspire to be the American president like the Lex Luthor does in the comics, or maybe other Lexes in other universes in this movie universe do? His ambition seems to be to step away from the American political structure and establish his own political structure as a kingdom in Eastern Europe. A tech utopia, Lois says. Now, maybe from there, Lex plans to do what a lot of kings do and kind of run an authoritarian regime. Maybe Lex's end goal is for Luthoria to become the global superpower and dominate the rest of the world, including America. But we haven't seen evidence of that yet. I still have a lot of questions over what Lex's tech utopia would look like, because if, and I'll admit this is a big if he does not plan to imperialistically expand that tech utopia across the borders in Europe, like Germany in the 30s, and within the borders of the Utopia do horrible things to his own citizens through subjugation and suspending civil liberties and all that horrible shit, it is, as of this moment, possible that if Lex just wants to establish a model country that provides basic needs and universal income, universal advanced healthcare, free universal childcare, a world-class public education, and a country that upholds the basic virtues of a diverse, tolerant society with civil liberties and free speech and a free press and protections against discrimination of any kind, and if he'd be willing to be more of a constitutional monarch with the real ruling power of this hypothetical country given to like a separate prime minister elected from a legislative body that has free, open, democratic elections, and then maybe certain rulings against political advertising spending and an independent judiciary of several layers of courts that have different kind of rotations and not lifetime appointed roles. You know, there's a lot of fixes we could make to the current American political system. Couldn't, hypothetically, Luthoria have been better than how the supposedly best nations on Earth treat their citizens? So, look, obviously, Lex Luthor is evil for all the reasons we've listed, but I think we can understand and appreciate his envy and his suspicion over placing all of humanity's hopes in a stranger that we haven't known longer than 3 years. And while we must judge his actions as wrong, until I know more about the full world of James Gunn's DCU and what the current power structures do to the everyday people of this planet, and until I learn more about what Lex was actually planning to do in Luthoria, I refuse to dismiss everything that was in his head as wrong. Comment down below with your thoughts, and a special thanks to one of our YouTube members, Sin City Monster, who supports us at the executive producer level. Follow me at EA Voss and subscribe to all the channels in the new Rockstars network for breakdowns and news coverage of everything you love. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.